Hey guys, thank you for joining Race Talk. I'm Matt Lewis, and I'm going to release my weekly series beginning today. And as promised, we got lots to talk about in the coming months. Lots of things happening. Lots of things happening in the coming years. 2021 going to be a big year for NASCAR. In what way that'll be, we will find out soon enough. So, like I said, this week we're going to primarily talk about NASCAR and some of the changes that are going on, and we will go from there. Let's talk about Talledega a little bit. Chase Elliott taking home the W. I know there's a lot of Chase Elliott fans. I'll be honest, I didn't see it coming. I know he runs fast in qualifying, but when I do my fantasy leagues, I say, hey, is this guy going to make it for the race? And more often than not, Chase is about a 50-50 at Dega whether he's going to actually finish or crash. And it wasn't a chance I was going to take this week, and I wish I did, so I regret it. I picked Brad Keselowski. I didn't even play Chase, and I missed out. So, lesson learned. So good for Chase. The standing ovation after he won was incredible. The crowd exploded. I was not anticipating a roar like that. That clearly states that that was a very popular win. And that's really cool to see with him. Come to find out, his dad won in the, I believe, Trans Am series that same day. Or some vintage series or some other series he runs. So that was kind of neat. Bowman running second 2 weeks in a row here at Dover to Martin Truex. And so you're starting to see some momentum with him, and I hope he keeps it going because he is getting a lot of backlash on social media right now that I do not think he deserves. I think he is a great driver. I think racing has three aspects to it: the financial ability, your team ability, and your driver ability. Sometimes I think your driver ability is more than your team ability, and then sometimes your team ability is more than your driver ability and your funding. So, there's a lot of variables here, and I think that can be said towards a lot of drivers. Bubba Wallace, Kyle Larson. We saw Kyle Larson have a horrible beginning of the year. Now he finally finished third in Dover yesterday, Monday race, because Sunday was rained out. After he went for a wild ride at Talledega, that was on the last lap. And, there's a lot of talent, and sometimes that talent isn't given what it needs to fully produce what they can. And I think Bubba Wallace is in that position. Bubba Wallace can drive a race car. And I guarantee you put him in Martin Truex's car or you put him in a Penske car, he's going to perform. He's going to run up in the top 10. He is struggling. His equipment's struggling. I think the team's struggling. The funding's struggling. He's all three tiers of what I just said are struggling on Richard Petty Motorsports. Now, the third aspect was a driver. However, he can drive. I think he's a little down on himself right now. I think he's at a point where he's like, I have high expectations. I came in second in the Daytona 500. And ever since then, it's been hit or miss. I've crashed a lot of cars, even though 2 were brake failures. That lack of confidence is affecting him right now. And it's not helping that his team's not getting any better. His cars are not getting any better. And I worry about his future and everything. I worry about the future of Richard Petty Motorsports. And real quick, since we're on Bubba, interesting thing happened yesterday. After the race, I was watching Speak for Yourself, and Jason Whitlock did a bit on Bubba Wallace and CEOs, Fortune 500 companies, and wanting to sponsor, and he pointed out Nike in particularly, but wanting to fund athletes that haven't even been in the field for 3 years. That was reference to Colin Kaepernick, who Nike backs and endorses, which is fine, but there are athletes out there that are active athletes, which that brand represents. If we're representing, anyways, we won't get into that. However, So his point was, if Nike can back someone that's not even playing right now, they should be able to back a struggling major part of history, especially with Richard Petty, but taking Richard Petty Motorsports and bringing it to the level that the King should be represented at. High-end equipment, the top-notch teams. And that's not happening. And they want to go on and brag about diversity within their businesses and promoting this and promoting that, but they're not stepping up to the plate. Richard Petty Motorsports is struggling. It's no secret. And how they're managing is beyond me. But if I were a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, you bet you I would have my name on the side of Bubba Wallace's car. And I think companies need to open up their eyes and see it for what it is and realize, well, you know what, we have a driver. We need to build around that driver and make it happen. Look at Tom Brady and the Patriots in correlation. Tom Brady's getting older, getting a little slower. He relies on that pocket. They build the team around him. Knowing that he has a talent, you have to adapt to how to make your team in a way where he can do his job to the fullest and produce the best results out there. And that's what Tom Brady does. That's how he takes a pay cut. That's why he gets good players around him, and he can keep playing. And that's just the way it is. No reason to get rid of him because he's cheap. He stays consistent. He goes to the Super Bowl every year or makes a good run for it at least. So I think that's a very similar situation to what we're in, except they're lacking the ability to get those good people around him, and someone needs to step up and take over before there is no more Richard Petty Motorsports, which I predict at this rate, 2021 being the end of it. So we'll see. Hopefully some sponsorship steps up. What I'm hoping is that the way NASCAR is talking about kind of reshaping, and 2021 is going to kind of be like a rebirth to NASCAR, I think. They started out with a schedule change for next year and some interesting moves there. I'm actually really excited for the schedule, with the exception of Homestead and July Daytona race. I think they should have left July Daytona race. I'm just bummed out for Homestead because that's my local track and that's my vacation every year. That's now going to up and go. So that's kind of a bummer. Anyways, so that was Talledega. Not as crazy as I expected it. The package there seemed... I didn't mind the package. As ugly as the 9-inch spoiler is on the back, I thought it was a pretty good race. I mean, what more could you ask for? There were so many lead changes and the runs they were getting up on people, and it was exciting. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Going to Dover was different package, different downforce. A lot of talk in the garage whether they like it or whether they don't like it, but ultimately, it's all you got. It's what you have to run. You just got to adapt to it and make the best of it. Martin Truex taking home the W. Coming from the back nonetheless after 2 inspection failures. And the crazy thing is that a lot of people on social media jump for it. Well, how does he fail twice and win the race and pass? Sorry about that. Speaking of Homestead, they were just calling me. Anyways, so yes, Dover. Martin Truex wins. Crazy race. He fails the 2 inspections, and then people on social media are going crazy. Oh, how does he fail 2 inspections and then pass the final inspection? Well, for the record, most of the time a inspection is failed, it is in the smallest degree. I mean, you are talking 1,000ths and just minor. So they're easy to fix. However, you got to keep in mind a team has got to get an advantage. So if they're got to be within a certain limit. They're going to take it to the max, and you just hope that those pieces of metal, those brackets, those this and that, stay in place the way you want them to once they're installed at the exact measurement you want. And sometimes that's not always the case, and it's off so much you can't feel it, you can't see it. So that's not all of this stuff is pushed in windows or deck lids or anything like that. Some of this stuff is just really small stuff. It just took him 2 trips to get it right. Luckily, Colpern's smart enough. He's not going to take a chance of getting ejected and all that stuff. He's going to make sure that it passes on the 3rd time. A lot of people saying, oh, money in Toyota. Toyota's feeding NASCAR money. It's not. It's not at all. For one, that would be illegal. 2, that's just not happening. It's not happening. Toyota performs well. We all know that. Since they came into the program and they've worked out their bugs and they've gone on a charge and they have just taken off. And Ford is taken off. And Chevy is now starting to get the ball rolling and perform. And was talked about at the beginning of the year, they weren't running so well, and we wouldn't see results till Texas and after, and we're starting to see those results with Chevrolet. So that's good to see. One thing I want to point out, clever on Chevrolet. A lot of cars can't or don't feel comfortable being pushed by a Chevrolet, unless they're a Chevrolet, because of the design of the nose, how it comes to a point. I noticed in Talledega, it was interesting that the license plate area on the back of a Camaro, the way it's designed, so when that nose goes in, your 2 outer points will touch evenly. It doesn't do that on any other. It doesn't do that on the Toyota, and it doesn't do that on the Ford Mustang. So, interesting fact. Just take note of it next time they're at Dega. I thought that was pretty interesting. Although a Camaro can push the other cars, you probably just don't want to push too much because then you'll feel the effect of that, especially if any tire comes off the ground or any loose wheel or anything like that. Will really mess that up. So, a lot of feedback about the aero packages. Obviously, everyone's seen Kyle Busch's comment, and not only from him, but Matt Benedetto gave his little bit of opinion, just saying basically that he could go up through the field and then you're stuck behind somebody for 20 laps and can't pass and can't do nothing. I think it all depends on the car, the setup. Where your car has the most useful power, you're able to pass somebody. But if you're pretty evenly matched and you don't have an advantage there, I think that can get frustrating. And I see what his point is about getting stuck there. But that's when you got to try things, try other lanes. And like I said, I'm not a driver, but there's other ways to go about it. However, I think it's the way that the media handles the drivers after a race that also gets some of these comments fired up, which get the fans fired up, which gets social media going crazy, and just a plethora of nonsense going back and forth. And the worst thing you could probably do is go interview Kyle Busch 5 minutes after he gets out of a car when he hasn't been happy all day. He's not happy with his finish, even though I'm pretty sure he got 10th, 11th, top 10, right in there. And he still is not satisfied with how he expects himself to perform, how he expects his team to perform. So when you go interview him and that kind of personality that everybody know he has, he's fired up, he does not care who's listening, who's watching, he will speak what is on his mind, and we all know that. So going forward, I think it's part of the deal. It's part of why media goes in there and does it. It's not because, it's our opportunity. It's because they know it's getting a reaction. However, that reaction sometimes I think hurts NASCAR. And you got to remember, television and NASCAR are separate. They got to work together to make it work, but they are separate. So they don't necessarily have to look out for one another. They have other sports they can cover. They have other things they can do. So realistically, um, by starting that drama and being dramatic about things and just blowing them out of proportion, that doesn't help the cause. It doesn't help the fact that NASCAR it's not suffering. I'm not going to say it's suffering because there's some pros and cons. There's some like better reviews this year than there were last year. You're seeing track attendance a little different, but we'll talk about that in another episode later on about my opinions on track attendance, obviously technology and stuff, etc. How that's playing a role, and what we might be able to see in the future with some of these tracks with the capacity that they can hold, might be getting to start downsizing and then utilizing some of that space to provide more of a fan experience. So there's interesting things there. Next week we go on to Kansas. Some of the favorites last year, Kevin Harvick won this race. Harvick has been up there, top fives, but not really making a whole lot of noise. This might be the track where that changes. We will see. Also a good track for Martin Truex. Chase Elliott won there in the fall. So I think you're going to see a good race here. I'm interested in seeing what kind of package they're going to run here, if they're going to run the same package that they run at Texas, or if they're going to change it. This stuff's changing every day. They want to announce that they're doing something. They're changing stuff in the middle of a race, which was understandable at Talledega due to gearing issues. On a quick note, some of you might be seeing posts for AKA Racing League. That is a Xbox PS4 esports series run by John Minatello. And if you have Twitch or anything like that, I believe they're exclusively on Twitch. And you could tune in and watch some of the esports racing there. Or if you have an Xbox and a PS4 and you want to get plugged in with him, he is the man to speak with. He's the CEO, founder, whatever you want to call him, Presidente of AKA Racing League. They've been around he's had this going for 10 years now, and very fierce competitor, great guy. And so if you have any questions about that or any interest in the esports side of NASCAR, he's the man to speak with. Again, John Minatello, AKA Racing League. Lots to talk about as far as the schedule change for next year. We'll be discussing that in upcoming episodes. I think there's a lot of cool aspects. I think it mixes things up. You're going to see possibly a different breed of champions. For the last few years, it's pretty much been the same 4 teams. Now it'll probably be 2 Gibbs cars, a Penske car, and a SHR car. That's my prediction for this year. Who will they be? We will discuss later on. So like I said, Kansas coming up this weekend. Night race should be great. And then we start off with All-Star Weekend, and then followed by the 600. So that should be a good time. If you haven't seen the post, please check it out. They released Kevin Harvick's car for not winning the championship. They said they would do a millennial car, and they did. They've released the paint scheme today. I'm going to leave it at that. I feel bad for Kevin Harvick. I would be embarrassed to race it, but it's all in good fun. Busch kept their word, and who knows? Maybe he'll win it. Bring him some good luck, some extra money. Who knows? But it's an interesting car, so go check that out. Again, thank you all for everything you guys are doing. Please comment any opinions, any topics, any discussions, all for it. Anything you'd like to see, please let me know. We'll make sure it happens. To the other admins, thank you very much for all your help and everybody posting content. I really appreciate it. It is a lot harder to do than I thought with time scheduling. Again, look forward to next week, and we will go over Kansas and some of the other series. Indy had off this week. IMSA did race. That was a good race up at Mid-Ohio. And also on the topic of IMSA, one of the episodes coming up, we will be discussing where I think NASCAR is heading towards due to some of the discussion over the last couple months, some of the articles, think we're going to see an interesting turn in 2021 that might shock some of you. So it'll be cool. I think it'll be really cool, and I think it'll be really good for the sport, and it's going to give people exactly what they want. And if it comes to fruition, and I'm right, it's going to be pretty cool. So again, thank you guys. Tune in next Monday, and I'll see you then.